You want to know what a $320 million maritime defense system sounds like when it dies? It doesn't scream. It just goes quiet. Complete digital silence. I was sitting in my Silverado outside Pacific Defense Systems at 11:45 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, watching my laptop screen go dark as Harbor Shield, 9 years of my life, locked itself down in front of a room full of Department of Homeland Security officials. The countdown had hit 0:45 minutes earlier. The screens went black and Charles Patterson's career imploded in real time. The best part? He had no idea I was watching from the Balboa Park parking lot 8 blocks away, or that I'd triggered the whole meltdown from my truck. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to 8:15 a.m. when Charles fired me for refusing to train his YouTube influencer nephew how to handle port security systems that protect the entire West Coast. That's when this whole thing started. My name's Thomas Garrett, but everyone calls me Tom. 49 years old, divorced dad, 18 years in Navy intelligence before I got into maritime cybersecurity here in San Diego. I'd been senior maritime security architect at Pacific Defense Systems for 9 years. And Harbor Shield wasn't just my job, it was my life's work. The most advanced port security platform the Department of Homeland Security had ever seen, protecting everything from cargo management systems to vessel traffic control to critical infrastructure monitoring, keeping every hacker from Beijing to Tehran from shutting down the ports that feed America. That Tuesday morning started different from most. I'd had breakfast with my daughter Sarah at our usual spot in Coronado. She's 17, senior year at Coronado High, straight A student with her sights set on the Naval Academy, smart as a whip and twice as determined. Over pancakes and orange juice, she'd been telling me about her academy application interview scheduled for next month. "Dad, what if they ask me about integrity under pressure?" she'd asked, cutting her pancakes into precise squares the way she'd done since she was little. "Like real-world examples?" "Kiddo, integrity isn't something you prepare talking points for. It's what you do when no one's watching, when doing the right thing costs you something." I'd reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You'll know what to say because you'll mean it." She'd grinned at that, the smile that reminded me so much of her mother before the divorce, before Jennifer moved back east with her new husband. "Thanks, Dad. You always know what to say." After dropping Sarah at school, I grabbed my usual coffee from the place on Orange Avenue, sat through the nightmare traffic on I-5, and walked into Charles's corner office thinking we were going to discuss the DHS contract expansion. The meeting was supposed to be about upgrading Harbor Shield's capabilities for the Long Beach integration, maybe adding new threat detection protocols for container terminal security. Instead, I found Charles pacing behind his glass desk like a caged animal, sweating through his $4,000 suit despite the building's air conditioning running full blast. You could practically smell the desperation coming off him. Charles Patterson had been CEO for 3 years, ever since the board brought him in from some Wall Street firm to modernize operations and maximize shareholder value. Translation: cut costs and pump up the stock price, regardless of what that did to actual security. "Tom, sit down. No coffee offer this time. No small talk about the Padres or the weather." That should have been my first warning. Something was seriously wrong. "We need to discuss operational efficiency," he said, using that corporate speak that always meant someone was about to get screwed over. I'd heard variations of that phrase before during my Navy days when some Pentagon desk jockey wanted to replace experienced sailors with cheaper contractors who didn't know port from starboard. The company had been under pressure for months. Pacific stock had been flat for 2 years, stuck around $47 per share while competitors were climbing. The board of directors, a collection of Wall Street types and former government officials who cared more about quarterly earnings than protecting American infrastructure, had been breathing down Charles's neck about aggressive growth strategies and capturing millennial market share. Whatever the hell that meant when you're talking about cybersecurity systems that protect major ports from foreign hackers. "I've brought in a consultant," Charles continued, his voice carrying that fake enthusiasm that executives use when they're about to announce something completely idiotic. "Someone who understands the global marketplace, the new economy, the digital native generation." That's when he walked in. Austin Patterson, Charles's 25-year-old nephew, dressed like he was heading to Comic-Con instead of a defense contractor's office. Ripped jeans, designer sneakers that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and a t-shirt with some anime character I didn't recognize. I knew him from YouTube. Sarah had shown me his videos during one of our Sunday dinners. 280,000 subscribers watching him review military tech and gaming hardware while standing in front of expensive cars he'd never earned. "Uncle Chuck says you're going to show me the ropes," Austin chirped, already pulling out his iPhone to record. "This is so sick. I'm thinking we could do a whole series, behind the scenes at a defense company. My followers would totally eat up authentic content like this. Maybe we could even do some AR filters with the security screens, you know? Make it interactive." I looked at Charles, hoping this was some kind of elaborate joke. "You want me to train him on Harbor Shield?" "Austin has fresh perspectives, Tom. He graduated magna cum laude in digital communications from UC San Diego. The board thinks new blood is exactly what we need to modernize our approach and connect with younger demographics. We're not just protecting ports anymore, we're building a brand, creating content, engaging with the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. New blood, right? What they needed was someone who understood that Harbor Shield wasn't some social media app you could figure out over a weekend of energy drinks and YouTube tutorials. This was 15 layers of military-grade encryption protecting the backbone of West Coast maritime infrastructure. The system that kept container ships moving smoothly through San Diego Bay, that protected cargo management networks from cyber terrorists, that made sure Chinese hackers couldn't shut down port operations during a supply chain crisis. Harbor Shield monitored everything. Automated cargo cranes at the port of Long Beach, vessel traffic management systems that guided massive container ships through crowded shipping lanes, fuel distribution networks that kept the entire port complex operational. One successful cyber attack could shut down $1.4 billion in daily trade flowing through Southern California ports. We weren't just protecting computer systems, we were protecting the economic lifeline that kept food on American tables and goods moving to stores across the country. But Charles had dollar signs dancing in his eyes and a board of directors breathing down his neck about cost reduction and market expansion. They wanted results and they wanted them now, regardless of what it might cost in terms of actual security. "I'm completely swamped with the DHS security review," I said, keeping my voice level and professional. "Maybe someone from the training department could help him get oriented with basic protocols first. Harbor Shield requires TSSCI clearance for full system access." Charles's face went hard, that executive mask slipping to reveal the desperate man underneath. "This isn't a request, Tom. It's a direct order from the board. We've already expedited Austin's security clearance through our government liaisons. I'd been in the Navy long enough to recognize when someone was giving you an order they knew was wrong. The kind of order that gets good sailors killed because some officer cared more about politics and career advancement than protecting the people under his command." Charles was looking at Harbor Shield like it was just another product to monetize, another asset to leverage for quarterly growth. "Austin, why don't you tell Tom about your vision for modernizing our approach?" Charles said, trying to regain control of the conversation. Austin's eyes lit up like he'd just been handed the keys to a Ferrari. "So, I've been analyzing your user engagement metrics and, honestly, your interface is super dated. Like, where are the interactive elements? The social features? My followers are always asking about government tech, and I think we could create some sick content around cybersecurity. Maybe some TikTok-style quick tips, Instagram stories showing day-in-the-life stuff, definitely some YouTube deep dives on emerging threats." He was waving his phone around like he was already filming, completely oblivious to the fact that every word he was saying made me more convinced that training him would be a catastrophic security breach waiting to happen. "Think about it," Austin continued, warming to his theme. "Cybersecurity is so boring to most people, right? But if we could gamify it, make it interactive, show people what you're actually protecting them from, that's content gold. I'm talking viral potential. We could probably get millions of views on a series about real cyber attacks." Charles was nodding along like Austin had just outlined the cure for cancer. "See, Tom? Fresh thinking. Austin understands how to reach audiences we've never even considered." "Harbor Shield protects critical maritime infrastructure," I said slowly, like I was explaining physics to a kindergartner. "Port operations, cargo systems, vessel traffic management. It's not content, it's not entertainment. It's the difference between American families having food on their tables and empty grocery store shelves when foreign hackers decide to shut down our supply chains." Austin laughed, actually laughed. "Dude, you sound like my grandfather. Everything's a national security crisis with you guys. It's just computers, right? I mean, how hard can it be? I've been building my own systems since I was in high school, built my entire YouTube setup from scratch. Streaming, editing, graphics, the whole pipeline. This is basically the same thing, just with more boring government requirements. That's when I knew Charles had completely lost touch with reality. Harbor Shield wasn't just computers. It was an integrated maritime defense platform that monitored and protected $1.4 billion in daily trade flowing through Southern California ports. The system tracked everything from massive container ships navigating through crowded shipping lanes to automated cargo cranes that could load 40-foot containers in minutes. It interfaced with Coast Guard systems, Customs and Border Protection networks, and classified Department of Defense maritime tracking protocols. One misconfigured setting, one social media post with the wrong screenshot, one behind-the-scenes video showing the wrong screen at the wrong time, and foreign intelligence services would have a roadmap to the most vulnerable points in America's maritime infrastructure. Austin wanted to turn national security into content creation, and Charles was desperate enough to let him. "I can't do that, Charles," I said finally. The words hung in the air like smoke from a misfired flare. 18 years of military service had taught me when to follow orders and when to stand your ground. This was definitely a stand your ground moment. I thought about Sarah's question that morning about integrity under pressure. This was exactly the kind of moment she'd been asking about. Can't or won't. Charles's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that officers use right before they destroy your career and everything you've worked for. "Won't," I said without hesitation. Harbor Shield protects critical maritime infrastructure, port operations, cargo systems, vessel traffic management. It's not a training exercise for social media consultants who think cybersecurity is just another content opportunity. Charles's hand moved toward his desk phone like he was drawing a weapon. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the San Diego Bay where massive container ships were moving through shipping lanes that Harbor Shield helped monitor and protect. Those ships carried everything from medical supplies to food to consumer goods that kept the American economy running. Austin wanted to turn their protection into YouTube content. "Send security up here now," Charles said into his phone, his eyes never leaving mine. Austin was still recording, completely oblivious to the fact that he was documenting the end of my career at Pacific Defense Systems. His phone was capturing every word, every expression, probably planning to edit this into some corporate drama video for his subscribers. "Thomas Garrett," Charles said, his voice cold as a January morning in Coronado. "Your refusal to follow direct orders and adapt to our evolving business model shows you're no longer aligned with company objectives. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security escort, 15 minutes to pack my personal belongings." The whole corporate termination routine that I'd seen happen to other people, but never thought would happen to me. But here's what Charles didn't know. What none of them knew. I'd been planning for this exact scenario since the day I started building Harbor Shield. See, when my ex-wife Jennifer got ovarian cancer 6 years back, the medical bills nearly wiped us out. Even with my Navy retirement benefits and Pacific's insurance, the treatments, the specialists, the experimental drugs that weren't covered. It was a financial disaster that taught me never to put all my eggs in one corporate basket again. Sarah was 11 then, and watching her mom fight for her life while we fought with insurance companies over every procedure, every medication, every doctor's visit, that's when I realized I needed backup plans for my backup plans. That's when I set up Garrett Maritime Technologies LLC with my dad, Robert, as the primary stakeholder. Dad had been a Navy Chief Petty Officer for 30 years before retiring to a small ranch outside Escondido. He understood the importance of preparation, of thinking 3 steps ahead of your enemy. Every patent, every piece of core architecture, every critical component that made Harbor Shield actually work was filed under that LLC, not Pacific. Perfectly legal, perfectly planned, and about to become Charles Patterson's worst nightmare. 2 security guards walked me down to my office. Professional guys, both veterans who'd served overseas and knew this whole situation stunk worse than low tide at Mission Beach. The older one, Rodriguez, had been a Marine Staff Sergeant in Iraq. The younger one, Thompson, was Navy like me, served on a destroyer in the Persian Gulf. In the elevator down to the 18th floor, I filled them in on what was really happening. "They're selling us out, boys," I said quietly, making sure the elevator cameras couldn't pick up my words. "Charles has meetings scheduled with foreign investors next week, wants to license Harbor Shield technology to whoever writes the biggest check. Kid's already talking about putting classified port security footage on YouTube. Rodriguez just shook his head and muttered something under his breath about corporate traitors. Thompson, the Navy guy, asked if there was anything they could do to help. "Just give me my full 15 minutes in the office," I said, "and maybe take your time walking me to the parking garage. I've got some calls to make." My office looked exactly the same as it had 3 hours earlier when I'd been a respected senior architect instead of an escorted security risk. Pictures of Sarah at her soccer games lined my desk, her scoring the winning goal at regionals last month, getting her academic achievement award, both of us at her high school graduation practice where she'd been selected as valedictorian. There was my old ship photo from the USS Nimitz, the original Harbor Shield development team working 20-hour days in that converted warehouse we'd rented off Mission Valley, and my coffee mug that Sarah had given me for Father's Day. World's okayest dad. 15 minutes to pack up 9 years of my professional life. I grabbed the personal stuff first. Photos, the mug, that small Navy flag Sarah had made me in 8th grade art class. But what I really needed was already in my jacket pocket. A USB drive that looked like any other storage device but contained something Charles had never bothered to investigate. That drive held the original patent filings, the licensing agreements, and most importantly, the administrative keys to Harbor Shield's deepest security protocols. Level 15, I called it, my insurance policy that I'd hoped I'd never have to use. While Charles and his board had been celebrating each new government contract I delivered, I'd been quietly building something they didn't even know existed. A dead man's switch wired directly into Harbor Shield's core architecture. "Don't take any company property," Austin announced from my doorway, still recording with his iPhone like this was all some reality show episode. "Uncle Chuck said you people always try to steal stuff when you get fired." You people? Like I was some kind of criminal instead of the guy who'd spent 9 years keeping his comfortable lifestyle safe from the people who wanted to destroy everything he took for granted. "Everything I need is right here," I said, patting my jacket pocket where the USB drive sat next to my truck keys. The walk to the elevator felt like a funeral march. Other engineers and support staff watched from their cubicles, some giving me sympathetic looks, others just keeping their heads down to avoid getting caught up in whatever corporate drama was playing out. Maria Rodriguez, my lead developer, caught my eye from her workstation and mouthed, "What happened?" I just shook my head and made a subtle hand signal we'd developed during late-night debugging sessions. Watch and wait. As the elevator doors closed, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my core team. "Storm incoming. Watch the 11 a.m. demo real careful. Level 15 protocols may activate." Maria texted back immediately. "Level 15? I thought that was theoretical. Nothing theoretical about it. Garrison Maritime Technologies holds all the keys now. My Silverado had never felt more like a mobile command center. I fired up my laptop right there in the Pacific parking garage, connecting through my phone's hotspot instead of the company network. Within minutes, I was logged into Harbor Shield's administrative interface through the back channels I'd built into the system from day one. The screen came to life with a simple message. "Welcome, System Architect. All systems operational. Security Level 15 armed and ready." Level 15. The logic was elegant in its simplicity. If the primary system architect's employment status changed to terminated without proper security clearance transfer protocols, Harbor Shield would automatically lock down everything. No access, no demonstrations, no $320 million contracts until the ownership dispute got resolved through proper legal channels. The system would protect itself, just like I'd designed it to. I checked my watch, 8:47 a.m. Charles's big DHS demonstration was scheduled for 11:00 a.m. sharp. He'd have a conference room full of admirals and Homeland Security officials watching him show off technology he thought belonged to him. Admiral Patricia Hayes would be there. She'd been evaluating maritime defense systems for 30 years, since before Charles got out of business school. If anyone would understand what was really happening when the system locked down, it would be her. Time to teach Charles the difference between licensing something and owning it. I activated the protocol with a single keystroke. Harbor Shield began its countdown. 2 hours, 13 minutes, 0 seconds, and ticking down steadily toward Charles's destruction. The beautiful thing about the countdown was that it was completely invisible to Pacific's monitoring systems. They'd have no warning until the moment their entire demonstration went dark. 133 minutes until Charles's world came apart at the seams. I sat in my truck, watching the countdown tick down on my laptop screen while San Diego traffic crawled by on Harbor Drive. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah between her classes at Coronado High. "Dad, saw some weird stuff trending on Twitter about your company. Everything cool?" I smiled as I typed back, "Everything's better than cool, sweetheart. Your old man just reminded some people why they shouldn't mess with guys who actually know how to build things. Awesome. Can't wait to hear the story. Got to get to AP Chemistry. Love you. Love you too, kiddo." That girl, 17 years old, straight-A student preparing for the Naval Academy, and smart enough to probably run circles around half the executives at Pacific. I was doing this as much for her future as anything else. Sarah deserved to grow up in a country where critical infrastructure was protected by competent professionals, not handed over to social media influencers for content creation. I drove downtown to Patrick Wells's law office on Broadway, past the harbor and the Navy ships that made this city what it was. Patrick had handled the Garrett Maritime Technologies LLC paperwork years ago, and he'd been waiting for this phone call ever since. "Tom," he said as his secretary showed me into his corner office overlooking the bay, "I heard about your employment status change. Ready to discuss your options?" Through his floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Pacific building 15 blocks away. Up on the 25th floor, Charles was probably making final preparations for his demo, completely unaware that in exactly 1 hour and 54 minutes, his $320 million Homeland Security contract was going to explode like a torpedo in San Diego Harbor. "Let's talk about what happens when that countdown hits 0, I said. Patrick pulled out a thick folder labeled Garrett Maritime Technologies Contingency Plans. We'd been preparing for this day for years, running through different scenarios, making sure every legal angle was covered. The man was thorough, which is why I'd hired him in the first place. "Harbor Shield patent filings are rock solid," Patrick said, spreading documents across his conference table. "Every core innovation traces back to your LLC. Pacific has been licensing technology they never actually owned. They had full usage rights as long as certain employment conditions were maintained, conditions that were violated at 8:15 this morning." "Exactly. And Patrick, I've got some interesting news. I've been in contact with Admiral Patricia Hayes at DHS Maritime Division. They've been watching Pacific for months, specifically interested in Harbor Shield technology. When news of today's events gets out, they're going to want to talk." At exactly 11:00 a.m., the Pacific conference room had been transformed into what looked like a naval command center. I knew this because Maria Rodriguez was texting me real-time updates from inside the building. 3 massive screens displayed Harbor Shield's interface in high-definition glory, while the company's remaining engineers stood ready at support stations like they were launching a submarine instead of demonstrating maritime security software. The DHS evaluation team sat around the polished conference table, 4 admirals, 6 Homeland Security officials, and enough combined authority to control more maritime assets than most small countries. Charles stood at the head of the table, confident as a poker player holding what he thought were 4 aces. Austin sat beside him with his iPhone, live streaming the whole thing to his YouTube followers with captions like "Taking Uncle's company to the next level, @defense tech, @entrepreneur, @disruptor." "Ladies and gentlemen," Charles began, his practice presentation voice echoing off the conference room walls, "what you're about to see isn't just maritime security software. It's the future of American port infrastructure protection, streamlined for the global marketplace and ready for the digital native generation." He nodded to the demonstration engineer, some kid fresh out of UC San Diego who'd been hired to replace Brad Thompson after I'd recommended Brad for a raise 8 months ago. The kid had talent, but nowhere near the experience needed to handle a system this complex. The engineer started typing commands, and the screens flickered to life with Harbor Shield's initialization sequence. Everything looked perfect for exactly 17 seconds. The graphics were sharp, the response time was instant, the interface was clean and professional. Then the first error message appeared. "System architect authentication required." The kid frowned, typing faster. "Just a minor authentication glitch, sir. Let me reset the connection. Access denied. Employment verification failed." "What's the problem?" Charles's voice carried that edge that officers get when their carefully planned operation starts falling apart in real time. "I'm not sure, sir. The system is requesting architect-level credentials that don't seem to exist in our current database." That's when my countdown hit 0. The screens flashed red 3 times, then displayed a message that made Charles's face go white as a Mission Beach sand dune. "Security lockdown initiated. Harbor shield system in protective mode. All access revoked. Time remaining, 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Contact system administrator for resolution. The DHS team exchanged those looks that senior military officers perfect over decades of dealing with contractors who overpromise and underdeliver. Admiral Patricia Hayes, who'd been evaluating maritime defense systems since before Charles got out of business school, leaned forward with the expression of someone who just watched a billion-dollar destroyer miss its target by 3 time zones. "Mr. Patterson," she said in that steel-trap voice that had probably terrified junior officers for the past 30 years, "is there a problem with your system?" The room fell silent except for the humming of the air conditioning and Austin's whispered commentary to his YouTube audience about technical difficulties and digital disruption in action. Charles was about to learn what real disruption looked like. "No problem at all, Admiral Hayes," Charles said, his voice cracking like a midshipman's. "Just a routine security protocol that'll be resolved momentarily." He turned to the kid they'd promoted to CTO. "Fix this now." The engineer's fingers flew across his keyboard, sweat beading on his forehead like he was trying to defuse an actual mine. "Sir, I can't access the core systems. There's something here about security level 15, but I've never seen that protocol before." "Level 15? What the hell is level 15? Nobody in that room knew the answer, which was exactly the point. I'd built level 15 so deep into Harbor Shield's architecture that finding it would be like looking for a specific grain of sand on Coronado Beach. "Get Thomas Garrett on the phone," Charles barked at his assistant, desperation starting to show through his corporate facade. "Sir, he was terminated this morning per your direct orders. I don't care if he was terminated. Get him on the line now." The call went straight to my voicemail, the professional recording I'd set up specifically for this moment. "You've reached Thomas Garrett. I'm currently unavailable, but if this is regarding Harbor Shield System architecture, please consult your existing licensing agreements and employment contracts. For all patent and licensing inquiries, please contact Garrett Maritime Technologies, LLC. Thanks for calling, and have a great day." Admiral Hayes stood up slowly, gathering her materials with the deliberate movements of someone who just wasted 4 hours of her valuable time. The other DHS officials followed her lead, their faces showing the kind of disappointment usually reserved for contractors who promised stealth technology and delivered paper boats. "Mr. Patterson, it appears you have significant internal issues that need resolution. We'll need to postpone this demonstration indefinitely." "Wait, please, Admiral. This is just a minor technical issue we can resolve in minutes." "Minor?" The Admiral's voice could have frozen San Diego Bay in July. "Your core maritime defense system is completely inaccessible during a $320 million contract evaluation. Your marketing representative is live streaming our classified discussion to social media, and apparently the only person who can fix this crisis is someone you fired 3 hours ago." She headed for the door, her team following like a well-disciplined unit retreating from a compromised position. "We'll be in touch. Maybe." When the screens finally went completely dark, a single message appeared in bold white letters. "Harbor Shield System in protective mode. All access revoked. For licensing inquiries, please contact Garrett Maritime Technologies, LLC. Authorized representative, Robert Garrett." Austin's live stream had broadcast Pacific's complete humiliation to 280,000 YouTube subscribers. Within hours, #PacificFail was trending across social media, complete with memes of Charles's sweating face and commentary about nepotism in defense contracting. The kid had inadvertently documented the greatest corporate security failure in maritime defense history. By 4:00 p.m., I was sitting across from Admiral Hayes in a conference room at Maritime Solutions Group downtown, overlooking San Diego Bay. She'd contacted Patrick Wells directly after the demonstration disaster. "Garrett," she said, studying me over her coffee cup, "I've had a very interesting day. In 30 years of maritime defense contracting, I've never witnessed such a spectacular system failure. Pacific disappointed you." "No." She smiled with the sharpness of a torpedo. "Charles Patterson disappointed me. Pacific is just office space and furniture. What we're interested in is Harbor Shield technology, and Harbor Shield, our legal team discovered this morning, was never really Pacific's to sell in the first place. 2 hours later, the framework was complete. Garrett Maritime Defense would be incorporated by morning with $400 million in DHS backing. The patents would transfer smoothly from my dad's LLC, and Charles Patterson would wake up tomorrow to discover his company was worth about as much as a used fishing boat with a broken engine. They fired me at 8:15 a.m. for refusing to compromise American maritime security. By 4 p.m. the same day, I owned the very technology their entire company was built on. That evening, I picked up Sarah from soccer practice and told her the whole story over pizza at our favorite place in Coronado. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Dad," she finally said, "that's exactly the kind of integrity under pressure they're looking for at the academy. How do you figure that, kiddo? You didn't just do the right thing when it was easy, you did it when it cost you everything. And you were prepared for the consequences." She grinned and raised her soda cup in a toast. To the world's okayest dad, who turned out to be pretty awesome. And that, as Sarah would say, was the best part of all.